Um, Hello, my name is Crystal. It's the 30th of September. It's just after 20 past 8. I had a bad sleep last night. Yesterday I'd gone to that medical assessment at 1:30 at Bachelor Street. As I approached the building, there were some men and women and children stood by the Jolly Corkers pub, and there was smoke wafting as I walked into the building. Pressed the buzzer, it's a blue door I believe, pressed the buzzer, got inside, and this middle-aged lady with glasses told me to fill a form in. So I filled in a form, who I was, where I lived, and then she took that. She then told me that they were 3 interviewers down and that there would be a long wait, but she hoped there wouldn't be, but there might be a wait. So I goes through into the waiting room. I suffer from claustrophobia. There was no windows open. There was a horrible smell in there. It certainly wasn't me, it was the building. It smelt musty and very hot and sticky. No windows were open. As I walked inside, to the right, the seats were full. They were full of women. I felt claustrophobic, so I didn't sit in them. I then went to the back, where there was one gentleman sat on the end, so I couldn't get on the end to feel like I was breathing. First of all, I was totally by myself at that end, and then a couple came in. This male was in a wheelchair and his big wife was pushing him. She had jeans on, like my mum wears. So I sat opposite the female. The wheelchair was there. He sounded to me like he was having breathing difficulty. They both had the latest smartphone when mine was basic. I was texting someone and they were asking me my sexual preferences and was I still looking for someone while I was in the building. So I had my phone out. Mine's basic, and they had 2 latest iPhones out and were laughing at pictures of some kind. So there was laughter emanating throughout the building, which makes me feel horrible. Then there was an Irish lady, kept talking and talking and talking, and it sounded like an episode of Father Ted. Go on, go on, go on! Go on, have another cup of tea. You remember Father Ted? Well, this Irish woman my son has had cancer, and she kept going on about cancer of the face and some other kind of forms of cancer. So there I was sat there, worried about my son Andy, and she was going on about this woman having half her face eaten off with cancer and that she needed a mask to put over her face. And I had to not put my earphones in so that I could hear my name being called. Otherwise I would have just put my earphones on and blocked it out, but it sounded like a horrific episode of Father Ted. The building itself inside was dirty. The doors were scratched. There was signs on the wall saying if you were violent to the staff you would be taken out and reported to the police, and you would get a criminal conviction. Yet it seemed to me that I was being provoked. There was a dirty bottle of Robinson's orange juice on the floor, and the woman opposite me just kept stuffing her face with crisps. And at one point she said to her bloke, "Have you just farted?" It was like I was in a room full of little children, not adults. It was terrible. Finally, this bespectacled young girl of about 20 came downstairs and said that I had to be interviewed upstairs, and it stated that I had a lump under my leg. So, but she did say I could request to be interviewed downstairs, but she took me upstairs anyway. I struggled with my breathing, and I walked up the stairs and I was sat down. I'd already waited nearly an hour. They were well over the appointment time, which is unacceptable to people that don't feel well. I was sat upstairs opposite the toilet with the male and female symbol on the door. A few scatty magazines, and I began to panic because it reminded me of being in a prison cell. So I got up and I had my phone near to my face. I was listening to music and going round and round, and the security guard came out. He went, "It's illegal." I went, "Pardon?" He said, "To take videos in here," he was Chinese, "to take videos in here, illegal. You can't take photos." Yet 2 people downstairs had phones and were mucking about with him, and he didn't go up to them and tell them, and he didn't tell anybody else off with the phone. He just picked on me, and at one point I thought he was going to get physical with me, and I just said, "Look, you can take my phone. Take it. Look." He said, "You take selfie." I said, "No. I'm 47 years old, and this Chinese security guard was treating me like I was a 16-year-old. And it was awful and terrible, and I had heart palpitations before I went into the interview room, and I thought I was going to collapse. But finally, the girl comes out, and she says to me, "I've got someone else in the room. I've got another lady in the room." So I was inquisitioned by 2 people. Well, the older woman didn't inquisition me. She was just sat in the corner listening to what I was saying. I was in there for, it felt like an hour and a half, with no windows open, no water, and no form of escape, it felt like. And the questions, did I ever commit suicide? Did I feel that I want to? All about my depression, my anxiety, trying to get inside my head. I felt worse than when I went in. She was a girl. She had no experience of what I was going through and feeling. By the time I left, I was absolutely terrified. I told her that I was afraid to go out of my flat sometimes because of physical and sexual assault and all sorts of things. I went into huge detail. Later on, I came home by myself, struggled up the road, and I was in a state of panic because that security guard had shaken the shit out of me, to be honest with you. Came in, and my dad rang me up. Well, my mum phoned and said my dad wanted to speak to me, which resulted in a huge pile of mess in the flat that I was trying to sort something out basically and look for a telephone. So I turned the flat upside down, and it was all over the place. And later on, David buzzed the buzzer, and he'd have come up the stairs to the flat, and I was feeling a bit shitty, a bit upset, a bit scared, and the place was all scattered with stuff all over it. And he comes up, and he's got this Nike bag. He's got what looks like a new coat on, and a new pair of trousers, and a pair of red trainers. And he says to me, "How are you? How was your birthday?" And I said, "Well, it wasn't that good, David. It was okay, but it wasn't that good." So some neighbours just said, "Hello, mate." So basically he came in slightly and said, "Be careful of the DVDs, because I've got some of his DVDs here." He said, "Be careful of the DVDs," which included Arthur and the Invisibles and Romeo and Juliet that I'm looking after. and he'd brought my Samsung Galaxy 2 back that was dead. I did a load of videos on that. There was no memory card. He said there was no photographs in your Samsung tablet, Mum. I said, and I knew that because I had the card with all my photos in. He said, and he'd wrenched the back off the Samsung Galaxy Tablet 2, he said, and showed me the battery inside. And I said to David, can I have my tablet back, please? He said, well, to have mended it was the cost £50. I said, I know, but can you give my tablet back, please? But you know what teenagers are like, don't you? He wants to hold on to it for a bit, so I'm letting him hold on to it for a bit. I said, where's my phone, David? He said, it's on my windowsill. I said, oh, okay. Which I've replaced my phone now. But when you live alone and you suffer from depression and all these blasted little bits and pieces build up, it makes you feel 10 times worse. And I just poured out my heart in that interview to that woman about what things upset me, and lo and behold, what I just told her in the interview started to happen in the evening, all over again. That Samsung Galaxy 2 cost me £200 second hand about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a long time ago now, but it's mine. And there's a dog barking now as well because I'm telling the truth. They're trying to make loud noises, slam doors, get dogs to bark to mask out my voice telling the truth. But my life is a pile of shit. I get bullied. And when David came up, there was 3 women out there, one with a dog, also surrounded in a corner, thinking me and David was going to have an argument. And nothing happened because my dad had calmed me down. I was looking for a phone, you see. And David come up and said that I was boring. It was boring in here. Later on in the evening, a man with learning disabilities from Birmingham phoned me and said that nobody liked him because he was boring. He'd lost all his friends because they said he was boring. And David had said it was boring in here when he left yesterday. This learning disability man said he lived in Birmingham and could I get a National Express coach to see him. He was 40 years old with grey hair and he was going to email me a picture tomorrow, and would I keep in touch with him. And he said he just wanted to be friends, but all his friends had left him because he was in fact boring. And I'd just been called boring. So that affected my mood. That made me feel miserable. That made me feel depressed. That made me stay indoors. This goes on a day-to-day basis, people being cruel. They eat in front of me, they call me names, even partners. And here I am, I feel depressed, upset, I've been called names again, and I don't want to go out till later on if I can manage it.